General, retired Brigadier General, I do believe, General Norman Ham. General, thanks for your time this morning.
Hey, good morning, Tim. Thanks for your patriotism and that of all your listeners. Glad to be on your show.
All right, your support of Donald Trump, an easy question at the outset. Why? What about Donald Trump makes him your candidate of choice here?
He's got a history of success. He's a leader. He has integrity. Where you look at the other side of the coin and we have failed leadership, zero integrity, big politics supported by big money.
What does Donald Trump offer by way of credentials? Yes, success in business. Beyond that, Hillary Clinton would say, listen, experience in the Secretary of State's office, experience as a U.S. Senator, married to a former commander-in-chief. I know the names of the countries. I know the players involved. That's what Hillary Clinton is going to say, and she's going to claim that Donald Trump doesn't know any of that stuff.
Well, as far as Hillary, she's had her chance. She failed in Syria, Libya, Iran, Iraq, the Ukraine, over and over and over, one failure after another. The only thing that they've been successful at is raising hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for their own personal well-being through a farce of a corporation.
Referencing there the Clinton Foundation, I presume.
Roger that.
All right, General Norm Ham. It's one thing for me to, shall we say, second guess military policy. It's certainly another thing for Donald Trump to do it, and quite another for someone in your position. You would know, at least much more so than either of us, from when you speak here, and in terms of the way we are prosecuting this conflict and the way we ought to be prosecuting this conflict. Donald Trump, as you heard there, points to things that he thinks are doing wrong in terms of announcing schedules and timelines and the rest of it, things we say we're not willing to do against some of these folks. You're the one who wore the uniform as a retired now Air Force general. What's your perspective on the way this conflict is being prosecuted?
Sir, I can speak to personal experience. I was the commander of Hope Air Force Base at Fort Bragg in 2011 when President Obama came to my base, came to my hangar, and figuratively ran a victory lap around the hangar and patted himself on the back for taking the troops out of Iraq, which was a huge mistake. No status of forces agreement. And they were briefed, he and Hillary, on a regular basis about ISIS before ISIS even tried out for the JV team. This is criminal, what they did. They let ISIS go into the vacuum in Iraq and grow. This is their baby. We need to identify what radical Islamic terrorism is. And until we identify and go after it, we will not be able to hammer it. And that's all they understand is a hammer.
I continue to hear that we have to identify, we have to call by name. And President Obama comes under fire, takes criticism for not doing so, for not calling radical Islam. People saying the same about Hillary. What difference as a substantive matter does it make what we call these people?
It's a mindset. When you go out to win a game, you set goals. You have to know what the rules of engagement are. We don't have rules of engagement. He has changed the rules of engagement for our soldiers and airmen in the field. When you're trading terrorists for traitors, when you're paying ransom to the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, Iran is responsible for those IEDs that killed our brothers and sisters in Iraq. People really don't understand that. They are all about anti-American, period.
Brigadier General Norm Ham with us again, joining us from Fayette County, an unabashed Donald Trump supporter here. Another big question here, a geopolitical, military, broad view question here. In your estimation, with the right leadership, and you're making it clear who you think the right leadership is, at least in terms of the election choice that we have in November, with the right leadership, pursuing what you would see and others as the proper policy here, how winnable is this? I mean, is this going to be one of those low-boil conflicts that we deal with for 100 years, or can we end this thing in relatively short order?
All right, that's a long question, and there's no simple answer. If you go back in time to 2009 after the surge that General Petraeus put together, we had it under control. There was still terrorism in this world, and we were still hunting down the terrorists, but we took our eye off the ball. There will always be some degree of terrorism, but we need to identify the problem and let them know that we are going to take the war, take the battle to them. And we can't tie our soldiers and airmen and sailors' hands by not allowing them to go full force and know where they're going, and we need to give them the proper equipment. Our airmen are flying planes that are 40 and 50 years old. We wouldn't let our children go on a plane that old, yet we ask other people's children to go to war and put their lives on the line in old, antiquated equipment.
And that's equipment itself. Let me ask you this again from your perspective here. Talk about the forces. I know a huge reduction in force strength as ordered up by this president and at this time of great global conflict. Do we have enough people? Do we have the right people?
Absolutely not. And on that note, you caught me at a time where I'm a little more focused on this issue. This last weekend, I went back to that same hangar that Obama did his victory lap in 2011, and I watched my old wing, the 440th Airlift Wing, deactivated, and I looked out at one of the biggest airports and ramps on the East Coast as far as Air Force bases, and saw that there are no permanent aircraft there to support our 82nd Airborne. This is a huge handicap to our national defense. And this is just one example of what Obama and sequestration has done to our military. The Army's in the process of cutting another 100,000 troops. The Marines just took 30 planes, F-18s, 40-year-old F-18s, out of the desert because they don't have the airplanes to fly. It's demoralizing. People are getting out of the military, not because they don't love this country, because they're not being given the tools and equipment to get the job done.
Brigadier General Norman Ham, let you go on this one, and this is a political question. Get you to wade into that swamp for a brief moment, as long as you're endorsing Donald Trump in this upcoming election. Can Donald Trump win, in your estimation?
Absolutely. You know, this PC culture that has basically overwhelmed our country to some degree, when you talk to people off the record and when they close that curtain, they're going to vote for Trump. Trump, to a large degree, says what a good part of America is already thinking. Democrats don't get anything done for America. You look at the 10 cities in this country with the highest crime rates. They've been run by Democrats for decades. People are starting to finally understand we need integrity and leadership in the White House. We need a problem solver who's not going to discriminate against putting the best people in the most challenging jobs and getting the job done.
General Norman Ham, Brigadier General, Air Force retired, joining us from Fayette County this morning. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and more than that, thank you for your service.
Hey, thank you, Tim.